And I believe it was Craig who actually asked John whether I could repeat some of the thoughts that I had given at the Buddhist temple in Milton Keynes. What I had done was to point out the fragility of our individual lives that are created not only by the social, ideological, and political intolerances that seem to dominate views from across the globe, but also the impact that our day-to-day activities have on our biosphere as a whole. I believe much of this turmoil and damage is a result of accepting the notion that our current global system, focused on producing more and more material objects, is the optimum way to a more prosperous and therefore happier society. Irrespective of which country or culture or political or ideological system one belongs to, the appetite to use the Earth's limited natural resources seems to be accelerating as we compete with one another to have more material possessions. You may be aware that it took from the beginning of human history up until 1804 for the world population to reach 1 billion. The next billion was marked just over 120 years later in 1927. The figure now stands at just over 7.5 billion. Demographers currently project the Earth's population will reach just over 9 billion by 2050. That does not mean that the population growth is out of control. In fact, world population growth rates have peaked in the late 1960s and are declining sharply and have declined over the last 4 years. The problem is really about the rate of consumption. When my daughter was born in 1973, the world population was just under 4 billion. It has nearly doubled since then, but that is insignificant when you consider that the global economy, measured by GDP, has more than quadrupled in the same period. A recent UN paper warned that human society is using the world's renewable resources unsustainably, thus degrading farmland and fisheries, rivers and forests. Our current model of economic growth is having a direct impact on the ecological systems on which we and our future generations depend. I was shocked to learn that during the same period, from 1973 to now, 60 to 67% of vertebrate life on our planet, other than human, has disappeared. That means 500 million years of evolutionary history has been wiped out since my daughter came into this world. I found that shocking. We are constantly sold the idea that increasing GDP is the panacea for the world's problems. In fact, when you look around the world today, increase in GDP seems to have increased inequality, is causing greater friction between nations and societies living therein. It is trapping people on a treadmill of thoughtless activity that dominates their lives and is ignoring the physical limitation of our planet to absorb carbon emissions in the atmosphere or plastic and other pollutants in the oceans. The desires and greeds that fuel the relentless consumption that our global economic system is based on is very aptly summed up by the Sanskrit word lobh. Lobh means fixating on things we don't really need, but think that possessing them will bring us happiness. If we are genuinely interested in having a world of harmony and one where our precious biodiversity is sustained, our focus needs to be on thinking deeply about what material possessions we actually need to lead healthy, fulfilled, and joyful lives. John's work depicting the demise at the hands of the human race of the 4 classic elements of earth, wind, fire, and water can, in my view, be averted by simplifying our needs and desires. The absence of lobh could be the spiritual glue that he calls quintessence. If we genuinely realize how little we need to be happy and exercise sufficient self-control not to fuel the unsustainable demand on this uniquely beautiful planet we call Earth, our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will have a planet to marvel at, enjoy, and care for. And who knows, perhaps in embracing simplicity in our lives and demands, we may encourage people to reach out to one another across current borders as the need not to be driven by greed, power plays, hidden agendas, and prejudices born of centuries of self-interest dissipates. Thank you for listening to me.